Hey everyone, Sam here with some great productivity tips and tricks. If you are someone who randomly stumbled on this video, this is a video I made for the guys in my 7-day web development email course, which you can find a link to in the description and sign up for free. So without further ado, let's get started with the tips and tricks. Actually, before doing that, we should review what we have right now. In the last two lessons, or I guess one lesson broken down into two parts, we went over how to do sketches. Once again, here's my super crappy and rough quick sketch. I sketched out 6 variations of the application we're going to build, the construction management web application. So we've done this, and also we've decided on a color scheme which has the primary, this is the primary color and the accent color, and all the rest of the supporting colors. So the first thing we need to do is try to code things up. What I usually do is I go to jsbin.com, or not JSI, jsbin.com. This is one of those online code playground type of web applications where you can just type your code in here and it'll show up right away on the side in another panel. And you also have the ability to add some CSS. For example, background ugly red. Yep, that looks ugly indeed. You're also able to add JavaScript and all that sorts of goodness. Super lightweight and fast. Anyway, let me resize this to look at our sketch as a reference. So now I'm going to translate this sketch. Out of the 6 sketches, I like this one the best, so I'm going to just use this one as an example. Actually, I'm just going to go with this one. If I were to code this up or translate the sketch into code, I first analyze what sort of parts I need to break it down into. So first of all, we have the top header, which probably has the client's logo and a user avatar of some sort. And then we have the sidebar, side navigation. This would list out all the resources such as projects, clients, what else? Employees, construction sites. And besides that, well, these navigation will just, when you click on them, this whole thing shows up. This whole section, I would call it probably the main section, show up with the list of all the resources currently in the database. So if it was projects, I clicked on projects, I'll see a list of projects. And then a search bar on top of that to query different projects. And when I click on one of the list items, one of the projects, I will see this whole section with the project name and all the rest of the details. All right, so we already had the body, which is like this whole container. To make styling a bit easier, I would still, within the body, have a wrapper of some sort, or container. This is where the first productivity trick comes in. When you use a code editor such as Sublime Text, Atom, or what's the other one? Bracket. I'm actually not sure about Bracket, but when you type the tag name and you hit tab, it'll autocomplete the tag, the entire HTML tag for you. So that's a cool trick for you to increase your productivity. So if you try to have a paragraph tag or an anchor tag, see, it actually write out the default attributes for you, because you wouldn't usually have an anchor tag without an href. So that's cool. But what's even cooler is that there's this thing called Emmet, which you can find at emmet.io. It's basically the tab expansion thing, or text expander on steroids. So instead of having to say type div tab and then go to the left and say class equals to container. With Emmet, I can just do div dot container. If you learned from CSS, dot means class, or if I have pound, that means div, ID. So when I hit tab, it'll autocomplete that part for me. Even less typing, so even faster, more productive. You can get Emmet for most code editors as an add-on or plugin, but JSBin comes with it, so that's pretty cool. I'm not sure if CodePen has that. Let me just quickly try that. Dot container. Yep. So I guess most Code Playground comes with that as well. So that's very handy. You don't have to set that up. You don't have to install anything. You just go to a URL and everything's set up for you. Okay, so let's get started with the layout. So first we have a parent container. Within that, I want to separate this section with from this section. So we go from top down. The parent container contains two elements, the header and the main content. So I'm going to say dot header tab dot header without saying div, just automatically, well, the default tag is div. So if you wanted to, also Emmet is smart enough to distinguish between inline element and block element. So if inside of a P you do dot, it'll do span instead of a div, because according to W3C standard, you can only have inline elements such as a span, but modern browsers don't care that much if you had a div inside, so it's still gonna render it. So if I inspect the element, you can see, whoa, oh, where's my element? Yeah, let me do that again. You can see that modern browser really don't care, but it's gonna bring that div outside of the P tag. So anyway, let me continue. One more thing about Emmet is that you can actually chain your expressions. So say within container, I want to have two elements, but I don't want to do them separately. So I can say dot header plus, just gonna call this one main content, or just main. And then when I hit tab, it's automatically gonna create the two elements for me. So that's super cool. Within the header, I'm gonna have a logo. The avatar, yeah, let's not worry about the avatar for now. So within the main class or main container, we're gonna have, again, two parent sections. One is the site nav and the other one is the content. So site nav, actually I'm gonna make the site nav an unordered list. So I can say ul.siteNav and tab. Oh, another trick. If you want to chain children elements, you can do so with a greater than sign, and then say li dot, or even Emmet is super smart, so you don't even need to say li dot. You just say dot site nav item. Yeah, so you can see that it's created both the unordered list, the UL and also the li. What's cooler is you can have multiple LIs because we have multiple resources. Actually, we have 4. Now when you hit tab, it's gonna create all 4. Super awesome, super quick. We have projects, employees, clients, and construction sites, and the main content. I guess I'll just say main content. Content. Let me distinguish them with text. All right, cool. Now that our HTML is done, we would start doing some CSS. So I'm going to hide the HTML tab or the panel, and then start writing some CSS. First of all, I need to consider that browsers actually have default styles. So when you look at this thing, this output over here, the output is, let me see if I can. Yeah, so this is the output element, or the entire output panel section. You can see that there is some slight small padding or margin. You see that? So if you created your website from scratch without some CSS libraries such as Bootstrap or Normalize, actually Bootstrap uses Normalize, then you're gonna have to deal with the default browser styles. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or IE all have default styles, but they're probably not the same. So normalize.css, if you Google that, normalize.css, it's actually a good starting point to normalize all the browser default styles. But for us, it's a quick prototype. I don't have to worry about all the different things I have to normalize. I just want to clear the padding. So for both the HTML and body tag, I want the margin to be 0, and see, margin's gone, and padding, there's no default padding, I guess. So if you look at this section, when I uncomment margin 0, see, that's the default style. And since we're building a dashboard of some sort, this is a dashboard, just a management type application, I want the entire interface to take up 100% of the browser window's viewport width and height. So I don't want that little gap that browser automatically add for you. So another cool thing is that Emmet actually works in CSS as well. So Emmet, to me, I'm not sure what the official explanation is, but Emmet to me is just a text expander, a smart one. What it does is, in CSS, if I want my margin to be 0, I can just say M0 and hit tab, bam. Padding 0 works as well. And once again, I want my entire interface to take up 100% width and height of the viewport. If you look at, let's say, just give it a background, you can see that body and HTML are automatically 100% of the viewport. But our container, remember, our container is the parent element of all the other elements. If we give that a background, see, it's already, that's not 100%. So I need to set the height and width to 100%. To do that, I just say H100p and tab. Super fast. And now if I set the background to red, it's not as what I expected. Why is that? Because height and width are all relative measures, relative units. And to dot container, its parent is actually body. And body doesn't have anything for container to reference. Actually, body has height auto and width auto. And what's 100% of auto? That just doesn't make sense. So to fix this little quirky bug, I'd say it's not really a bug. It's pretty easy. You just set 100% to the body and width 100%. And then you can see on this side that it's already, the container is already 100%. So just get rid of that ugly red background. All right. Let me tell you another very important CSS feature that's only available in CSS 3, but it's going to be very, very valuable to your productivity in terms of mockup creation. It is called the Flexbox. You probably heard of it. You probably have already learned it. But for those who haven't, Flexbox, if you just Google it, it's basically layout mode, providing for you can read all of this on your own. Be sure to check out the MDN one. Screw the W3 school. Oh, it's out of there. Cool. All right. Ignore me. Just ignore what I just said. So you would want to learn about Flexbox on your own. I'm not going to go over that because that's going to make this video too long. It's already too long, I think. But the main benefit of using Flexbox is that if you learned the traditional way of positioning your divs or your layout, when you want to have an element on, say, the left side and another element to take up the entirety of the rest of the space, you first have to set the float property of this element to left, and then let me see if I can do that real quick in here just to demonstrate that. So I want the UL to float left and main content to take up the rest of the space. I would say dot side nav float left, and you can see it's already like floated to the left. And let me see if I can get content to show up better. Or is it main? No, main is, oh yeah, it's main content. See how main content is taking up 100% of the space while side nav is floated to the left. All these quirky properties you have to know of. And you have to say main content flow to the right, and then say width, I guess 100%. No, not 100%. You have to take into account the width of the side nav. Just a bunch of things like that are, I mean, I'm probably not even doing it right. My point is, you have to do a lot of extra work to achieve that in CSS, in the traditional layout mode or layout method, I guess. But let me show you the new way, or the Flexbox way. It's pretty easy. You just say the main element should, or the main class should have a display property of flex. See, immediately, that's the only thing you need. And if you take a look at main content and give it a background, see, immediately content is correctly floated to the right. I mean, not floated, but it's not taking up 100% of the space anymore, while our side nav and content are taking up the correct space, I guess the correct layout. So the side nav, it's correctly floated to the left, while main content is taking up the, well, it's not taking up 100% of space, but that's easy to fix. Just say 1, done. So you can see that everything is super easy to, in Flexbox at least, everything is super easy to achieve. All these layout effects are really easy to achieve in Flexbox. You just basically need 2 lines. But of course, before that, I need to clear the style of our UL, because UL has some browser default styles such as padding and margin. Cool. And also want to get rid of the list style, which are the bullet points. All right. Now there's a slight problem, which is I want this whole content, the main content, to take up 100% of the space, which is pretty easy to achieve as well. We just make container a Flexbox as well. because remember, let me see if I can pull up an official explanation. Yeah, I should have prepared this, but anyway, Flexbox, like its name suggests, it makes your layout flexible, but flexible with rules. So if you wanted your site nav to take up certain amount of space and your content to take up 100% of the rest of the space, you don't have to know the width of your unordered list element, the site nav element, to be able to calculate the rest. Flexbox just takes care of that for you. And there are some properties for Flexbox to work. For example, the default property for Flexbox is it has a direction. Default should be, so if I just type that, default flex direction is row, so it goes horizontal. So say the first element will be on the left and the rest will just take up whatever the rest of the space is. But if you look at the sketch, the top header should actually be on the top and this should be on the bottom. So another direction is column. So now you can see that they are correctly spaced. And if we want the main div, remember this entire thing container has the class of main. Look back at the HTML. So I don't know why this is not collapsible. Yeah. So you can see that's the header, and the other element under container is main. So similar to how we dealt with this main content, we just say flex is 1. Now it's taking up 100% of the rest of the space. It's all flexible depending on how large your viewport or browser window is. So if I resize, you can see that there's no scroll bar on the side because this is not absolutely positioned, or it doesn't have an absolute dimension. It's all flexible, right? All right. One thing I forgot to add is I will make my font family to be not serif. Most web applications use sans serif fonts such as Helvetica or Open Sans, or what's the other one? Arial even. Based on some research, which I forgot the source of, it was definitely an authoritative UX research that sans serif fonts, meaning the ones without the little tick at the end of the letters, it's easier to read on screen and at small sizes, especially for app interfaces, than using a serif font such as this one. It's usually, the serif fonts are usually used for magazines, non-user interfaces, more like just contents like blog posts or a newspaper. So first of all, I'm gonna give it a Helvetica, and if Helvetica is not present in the user system or the operating system, I would probably just fall back to Arial, and then the last fallback is sans serif. All right, and I'm of course gonna get rid of the ugly backgrounds. Oh, another productivity trick. See how it simultaneously deleted 2 lines at the same time? Simultaneously? I just clicked on the end of this line and then hold Command on the Mac or Control on PC to select additional lines. See, I can just select multiple lines and delete them or edit them. So if, say, you want to change both of these backgrounds to white, you can just say double click on this word and then hold Command for left and again Control for PC. Double click on the other word, red. You just modify the content. So that's another trick. All right. So we want our header to have a fixed height, or it doesn't have to. Yeah, no, forget what I just said. It doesn't have to have a fixed height, but we do want some padding because see all the content are crumpled up. So yeah, that's header. Dot header would have a padding of 15 pixels. And I also want to do that for the content, padding 15 pixels. And I will not do that for the site nav, which I'll explain why later. So the top nav, it's pretty much done, I guess. Maybe we can add some, yeah, later. So for the site navigation, this is where we start to apply our color scheme, which is over here. So remember our accent color, it's used for things that need to catch your attention, like an action button, a call to action, like say buy now, or for our application, it will be create new project or something like that. Accent, it's not supposed to be dominant. That's what our primary color is supposed to be. Primary color just appears more often than every other color. An accent color, it's just not supposed to appear as as frequently. So for our navigation bar, we do want to draw the user's attention to this area, but we also don't want too much attention because it's like side aid, what we actually want to draw attention to is the content, the main content. It's this area or this whole area. So we are going to, again, apply the primary color to our navigation, but make the primary color very dark. Lower the contrast to make it not jump out as much. So let's see. How do I grab the color, the hex value of this? Well, for Mac, I've been using an application called Zip. So if I go there and open Zip, and I click on this little thing, it's just a color picker. For PC, there's a really great tool called PicPic. It's spelled PicPic. You can just go download it. It's free for the basic features. The basic features is a lot. There's a lot of features like rulers and screen cap editors and a bunch of other cool stuff, which includes the color picker. So if you wanted to grab, say, the color of this blue, you can just go to PicPic and select the color picker, or you can assign a keyboard shortcut. That's even better. For me, I have a keyboard shortcut for my Zip, which is Command, or is it Control Command P, or that should be the default. And then just hover over the color and then click it. It's automatically a copy to my clipboard. So I just paste it like that. All right. So what I actually want is a dark color, a very dark color, but it's still the primary color. So I'm gonna pick the darkest on the spectrum, on the darkest shade of primary color. I'm gonna click that and then go to our site nav. Again, I can say BG, thanks to Emmett. I don't have to type the whole word. Paste. All right, cool. Now we have the background, but we can't see the text anymore because the default is black. Recalling from our design lesson, we don't want our content or our text to be true black. we want it to be off black. So this is a pretty good off black, I think. Bootstrap uses a slightly darker off black, which is actually 33333. 3, actually 6 threes. Is that 6? You can check it out in in Bootstrap's CSS file. All their texts are actually 333, not black. So for us, I'm gonna just set the default color for our entire application to this color, the darkest primary color. And we also want to have some contrast for the text over dark background. And again, we don't want true pure white, because that's going to create too much contrast and probably hurt our eyes over really bright LCD screens. So we're going to pick a slightly lighter, like very light primary color for our in place of our white. So for that, I already have that in the color palette, color scheme. So I'm gonna say for site nav, the color should actually be this. All right, there's some contrast. That's probably, it can still, like the dark, the dark is all right. It probably appears black because it is pretty dark relative to the rest of the page, and the white is probably, yeah, I say it has enough contrast, probably a little bit too much, but I think it's okay. We can always tweak it later. So that's that for our menu. And the problem right now is the menus are like, these are supposed to be menus. They should be at least interactive. So when I hover on them, they should have a different background color, at least just give the user some feedback that these are clickable, aside from just having the hand, the little icon thing. So like kind of like cursor pointer. When you have anchor tags, your cursor just turns into a little hand. We're gonna worry about that later. So we want some interactivity, basic interactivity, such as hover effects and that little hand cursor change. We could do that by adding or wrapping the text with an anchor tag. So we do A, and for now we're just gonna point it to nowhere, the href to nowhere, and wrap it around like that. Okay. If you're using a text editor, I've been using Sublime forever. It's pretty awesome. You can actually get the emmet package and the keyboard shortcut for wrapping something. Like, okay, let me just quickly show you that and say assign the syntax to HTML and project. Okay, actually list project. So if I wanted to wrap project within an anchor tag, I just press Control W. It's given that I have Emmet, the Emmet package installed. Okay, so I can actually say, go here. See, it says Control W. That's the keyboard shortcut, and I can just say Control W, and then under here I can say A. Okay, see, I don't have to do all that left arrow, right arrow, and all that crap, copy and cut and paste. But unfortunately, most online playground don't have that feature. So JSBin doesn't have that feature. Pretty sure CodePen doesn't have that either. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, it doesn't have that feature, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna have to do it the old-fashioned copy and custom paste way. Okay. All right. Oh, actually, I can probably do better. So if you can't use the wrap functionality, I would just cut the word and say a curly bracket that thing, and when I hit tab, it'll automatically wrap that for me, and I just have to type that. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Emmett. Curly bracket tab pound. Once again, we have to take care of the default styling for the anchor tags. So I'm gonna have to say dot site nav all the anchor tag. It's under list. Yeah, I'm gonna say all the anchor tags. Well, have the color of this. All right. And I want to get rid of the underline, which is text declaration none. Okay. I like from a pure design point of view, this is pretty hard to click, you know. When I have to, like, all these elements are so close together, so I'm going to add some padding. Remember, I left out the padding for the site nav. So if I had a padding here, 15, see, it's not going to be applied to all the individual list elements. So I'm just going to apply that instead in the anchor tag. So padding 15. And the problem you're seeing now that the anchor tag has a padding, but it's not visible, or like it's not applied, is because anchors are by default inline elements, and the inline elements paddings do not push the other elements underneath. Like, it is actually applied, but you just can't see them because it doesn't. These elements are all inline, so the spacing wouldn't apply to the rest of the elements. Like, it wouldn't push them down. So one way to solve that problem is change the display property to block. See, now all the paddings are all applied, and I guess 15 is too much. So I'm gonna have the top and bottom to be so the right and left should be 15, but top and bottom should be 10. Okay, that's pretty good. Except I want some more padding up there. So I will add that under here, padding top. And again, we already had the padding 0 here. This padding top is going to overwrite the top property that we previously had. Padding top, let me see, should I be 5, 10. Cool. Now we have some basic functionality, basic interactivity, feedback for the client, for the user. So when we hover on them, you can see this little hand cursor, suggesting that they're clickable. But they're still I still don't know if I'm hovering on them correctly, you know, because the background should have changed. So let's see. We could just use the slightly lighter color than the darkest primary color in our palette, in our color scheme. But I want to show you an easier way. Okay. So I'm gonna actually have to say the hover at the background. Okay. I don't know about you, but it doesn't look very harmonious. That's even a word, harmonic. So I'm going to show you a better way. First of all, let's talk about CSS preprocessor. Right now we're just writing CSS, but you might have heard of less or Sass. Less and Sass. Actually, less CSS. Yeah, less JS. These are CSS preprocessors. What that means is these are languages that are not CSS. So if I type something like this is an example of less. If I put this in here, it's not gonna do anything. Okay, it's not gonna take any effect because it's not valid CSS. CSS preprocessors are basically languages that compiles into CSS. Now, why is that important, or why is that useful? Why is that necessary? Because CSS is lacking some important features of a programming language. For example, we had this color. Let's see. So we're reusing the same color over here and down here, and we're also reusing some values are reused across our style sheets. Some style rules are reused across different places in our style sheet. So it would be very nice if we could just say, just give our color a semantic name. Say this one is our primary black, I guess. Primary black equals to this. And then we would just be able to say the color should be primary black. That's very semantic, very readable, very reusable, but default CSS, native CSS doesn't support that. So we need a language, another language that compiles into CSS to be able to bring those features to CSS, if that makes sense. Less is one of the programming languages, or one of the preprocessors that most people use. It's very popular. Sass has a lot more functionalities than less, but it just depends on whichever you prefer. It's a personal preference, because for our simple mockup, less would do, For a simple mockup project code, we could easily use either less or Sass, because the basic functionalities we use are available in all of those processors. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. To be able to start writing less, I just go over here and pick less and change the syntax to how you actually create a variable. All right, so, and how you actually use a variable. Let's use this one for example. I'm gonna get rid of that and say primary white. Okay, and use this color over here. Okay, you see how that's already applied? It's pretty cool. I'm gonna do some more refactoring. And also for our padding. Okay, so I decided the default padding for most elements should be 15 pixels. That's what Bootstrap actually uses. So I'm gonna have a default padding. I mean, you can name it however you like. Default padding is it's probably too long for a variable name, but I think it's readable. It's if I were to pass this style sheet to someone else, they can easily understand it. So I see no harm in having a long variable name, because I'm gonna just copy paste anyway. Okay. All right. Another cool feature for that's provided by a preprocessor is nesting. Okay, first of all, what's nesting? Nesting is basically, you can, instead of saying siteNav and then siteNav A as a separate rule, separate expression, you can just nest it under. Okay, so when you write it like this, nest the A element under siteNav, when less is compiled, it'll automatically compile into something like this. So just a way to save a few keystrokes. And also another key benefit is that if we look at our HTML structure, we have the siteNav and then li and a, we can actually mimic that structure in our CSS. So that's even more, that just gives us a better understanding of our structure overall. So I think it's a very beneficial thing to do, to nest our styles under. So if I said background is red, so you can see how, let me see if I can, if I had an anchor tag in the content, see that content doesn't have the background, only the anchor tag that's nested under. So the children of sitenav get this style. So just a quick experiment of how that works. So the next thing is we can also have a shorthand for our hover styles, like those colon something, colon active or colon hover. In less is the ampersand. So say you want the sitenav to have a different background when it's hovered. Instead of typing .sitenav colon hover, you can just say ampersand colon hover, background is red. See, when I hover over it, it's red now. Okay, so that should give you a better understanding of how the shorthand works. So for our anchor tag, remember we want to have a lighter color to indicate that we've hovered on one of the elements, whichever the corresponding element that we hovered on. We want to say hover background and give it a lighter color. The cool thing about less or Sass or any CSS preprocessor, it's that they come with functions. So like if I want a lighter color of our primary black, I can just say lighten, like Photoshop, like a layer styling or overlay style. You want to lighten the primary black by 50%. So now when I hover over it, it looks like crap, but you get the idea. By 20%. So I do want to saturate it a bit. It looks pretty dead to me right now. So I want to saturate it. I can just wrap the whole thing in saturate. Well, I mean, this is just a quick demonstration of the features. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a good way of doing things, but you're doing mock-up. Who cares? You can just do whatever you want. It's the productivity and speed that we really need to nail down for this phase. So I'm gonna saturate. We want to saturate this color by 10%. Okay, it's pretty cool, hey? So there's saturate, lighten, darken, desaturate, and some other cool overlay style that you can probably find on their documentation if you just Googled it. Okay. All right, for this one, I'm probably going to say, first of all, let me just save a primary color. Primary. I want to darken the primary color by 30%. How does that look? Not too bad. 10%. All right. I don't know. I can spend the whole day just tweaking the percentage, but you get the idea. Let's not spend too much time on just this little tiny small detail. That's just demonstrating all the useful productivity features that you could benefit from by using less. We just have to finish the rest of the layout. So just a quick wrap up. We talked about how to use Emmet to quickly generate HTML. So if I were to generate the whole thing, in under, say, 2 minutes. I say container header plus dot dot logo plus dot main dot site nav plus dot main content. See, everything is super fast except this is not the correct order, but you get the idea. You know, like how we can just say container dot header, and within header we have logo and tab. Okay, so we talked emit for HTML, and also emit features for CSS, such as margin 0 and padding 0, all that sorts of goodness. Yeah, it actually works for a lot of, if not all, CSS properties. Say if I want a background color, or if I want a border right, border left, like all these things, emit is awesome. We also talked about CSS preprocessor, such as less or Sass, the less features, you know, the variables, also the layer, the overlay styles, darken or lighten, and also the shorthand for the shorthand and the nesting. These things should allow you to create a mockup very quickly, and it'll speed up your workflow and productivity tremendously. So anyway, this video has been super fun for me to make, although it's super long, and I should have some water. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Again, if you stumbled on this video somehow, you're interested in learning about the rest of the process, the rest of the development process, go ahead and check the description to find a link, and you can sign up for free for the 7-part email course. Thank you very much, and that's it. Bye.